With plenty of room, we follow standard procedure to sail off the anchor. Hold the anchor up short, raise the mainsail, break the anchor out, and sail away. Except there's just one little problem. The flooding current is holding the boat stern to wind, which will make it very difficult to raise the mainsail. If you try to raise the mainsail with the boat pointed downwind, what's generally going to happen is it's going to get pushed up against the rigging and get snagged on things. So we're going to have to try a little different strategy. Notice I steered the boat off to port to the left side of the screen, and that was to clear the anchor rode off the bobstay because the boat was sailing over the anchor. The force of the wind was pushing the boat over the anchor. So first I had to get the anchor rode clear and off to the starboard side. Once I did that, then I could go forward and weigh the anchor, which is what I just did right now. So we're just drifting. We're anchors away and we're just drifting right now. Since she's still pointed off the wind, what I'm going to do is go and raise the staysail. And once we get the staysail set, I'm just going to sail for a little while to get out into a little more open water. We still have shoals on either side of us, so I just want to get out into clearer water. Then once we have some room, I can put her up into the wind and raise the mainsail. Except I didn't turn her quite close enough up into the wind. And what's happened here is one of the battens in the mainsail has snagged the lee topping lift. So I'm trying to clear that right now. So finally what I end up doing is falling off, getting up some speed, and then jamming her almost straight up into the wind, so then the mainsail will luff and will work itself free, so then I can finally raise the mainsail. And there we go. It's clear. And so finally we're on our way out. Gotta put her through a jibe first. And we say goodbye to Boca Grande. That's the furthest west we're going to get this year. And now we're beginning our trek back toward Miami, and then in May up toward the Chesapeake. And we got some dolphins here to join us for the ride out. Well, we got another round of strong northerly winds coming tonight. So I'm going to put into an anchorage which is essentially just off to the side of the Niles Channel, just south of Ramrod Key and across from Newfound Harbor. And it leaves us with about 15 miles left to go to Marathon, but it offers pretty good protection from strong winds from the north. The following day we continue carrying on toward Marathon. Well, it's Friday, March 22nd, first day of spring, and we're headed back to Marathon here. And these winds are supposed to diminish. Any time would be nice. We got northerly winds about pretty much 25 knots right now. On the other hand, this island packet behind us is not doing too much better, so I guess I can't complain too much about the old girl here. I met up with those folks on the island packet the following day. We exchanged emails and they sent me some wonderful photographs. Ahoy, folks. It's Tuesday, March 26th. We are presently right about here, anchored off Boot Key. In settled weather, this is a popular anchorage area here, because generally the winds tend to be northeast to southeast this time of year. And it's fairly well protected. You get some boat traffic in the daytime. But during the nighttime, generally it's fairly flat, and it's kind of nice out here. The water is clearer, and you're in the open. However, we got strong northwesterly winds coming tomorrow, which is roughly from this direction, which means that we're going to lose our protection. As you see upwind of us here, there's some shoals, but there's still a fair bit of deep water. Well, deep 11 feet, but that's still enough for waves to build up. So the plan is to sail around here and anchor right off of Sister Creek. And they say you can get in close to the beach. This is Sombrero Beach. The chart is not showing much water there. But I'm going to sail over and just, the plan is to sail off just to the right, to the east of this flashing red. So I'm off to the side of the channel. And just anchor here for the next couple of days. That way I'm in the lee of Boot Key, and the winds are supposed to come northwest and then shift northerly and then northeast. But anywhere from the north, I should be fairly well protected there. So we're going to just try it and see what happens. If you want total protection, you can get into Sister Creek, but I do not have an accurate chart of that. So what I might do is take soundings with the dinghy and just get an idea of how wide that is. You can go and anchor in Sister Creek, and that'll be completely protected, especially if you work your way up in here. Then you don't have to worry about anything. However, when the winds go down, locals tell me generally you want to get out of Sister Creek because it gets very stuffy and buggy. You're in the mangroves, so there's no wind. And so it can really become unpleasant if you don't have air conditioning. So here we are, anchored off of Sister Creek, just off to the side of the red there, marking the channel. And it was pretty blustery this afternoon. The winds have eased a bit, the strong winds are forecast to hit tonight. So far this is giving us good shelter and the holding seems to be pretty good. And the only negative is you can see we're rolling a bit. We're getting a bit of a wraparound swell. But I think as these winds veer more northerly, that swell will go down because the swells are coming from the west side. So I think they're just wrapping around the west end of Boca Grande Key. So we'll see. And right now winds are about 10 to 15 knots. They got up to about, say, 15 to 18 this afternoon. They've gone down a little bit. But as I say, the forecast is around midnight. The winds are going to shift more northerly and supposed to pick up to about 20 to 25 knots. So we'll see how it is. So the other night we spent anchored just about right here when that norther went through. When the wind was northwest, we had some roll because there was some swell wrapping around Boca Key and hitting us broadside. But once the winds came northerly, and that's when they were strongest, in the 20 knot range, it was very flat there. So we were comfortable, and even our northeast, it was still comfortable there. So that was a decent place to ride out a norther. However, when I picked up my anchor the following morning, the chain was snagged on the bottom. And I was cranking it on the windlass, then suddenly it broke loose and I actually fell backward on the foredeck. I think the bottom here is studded with small coral heads. I didn't dive on it, but that's what it felt like. Otherwise it looked like it was grassy. And a grassy bottom for some anchors will cause the anchor some difficulty in setting. The spade anchor had absolutely no trouble. It did not budge an inch. But I would probably refrain from using this anchorage again only because I don't like anchoring in places where there's coral heads. Not only does it damage the coral, but it also damages your anchor chain. It scrapes the galvanizing coating off and will cause it to rust sooner. So if there was a real blow coming through in Boca Key, what I would do is use a little more planning and forethought. And either if you got light southerly winds, southeasterly, southwesterly, as I would work my way up into Sister Creek. And it's almost wide enough to sail there. With a favorable wind, it's wide enough to sail. If not, I could use the dinghy as a push boat. And you can go up and just anchor right in here. And when I went through there in the dinghy, there were about 5 or 6 boats anchored there. And they med more, so you tie your stern to the mangroves. And there was a fair bit of room, and it's of course very well protected in there. So I'm back in Marathon, and I'm waiting for some packages to show up. Also waiting for weather to sail to Miami. So I'm going to take this time to continue my pilot training with the drone. So I'm up to level 2 of my drone pilot training. Level 1 was flying it off the beach, so level 2 is flying it from the dinghy. Except we're in very shallow water, so if I'm unsuccessful in bringing it back for a landing, there's at least a chance that I might be able just to leap overboard and run after it and catch it before it ends up in the water and completely ruined. So far so good. Now let's bring it in for the landing. And got it. So I'm going to practice this exercise about half a dozen times or so. Just flying it from my hand, bringing it back and catching it. And then we're going to move up to training level 3. Level 3 is to fly it off the boat at anchor. So similar to flying it from the dinghy, except of course we got a lot of rigging we got to watch out for. The drone hits any piece of that rigging and that's probably the end. So 3, 2, 1, give it some power and we're up and away. Now let's practice a few hovering maneuvers and then bring her back in for a landing. So Watch that altitude, watch that radio antenna, watch those running backstays. And forward, catch. So now we are ready to become a drone Jedi and launch it from the boat while the boat is sailing. Well, maybe not quite yet. So I'm going to take an intermediate step and launch it from the dinghy while the dinghy is moving. This actually adds a considerable layer of complexity, because for smooth filming you need to keep the drone at a constant distance from the boat while the boat is moving. And the drone is programmed so that when you take your hands off the control, it hovers at a GPS point, so one point in space. But since the boat is moving, then the minute you take your hands off the control, the drone flies away from you. And so that not only makes filming more tricky, it also makes takeoff and landing somewhat more tricky.